You are listening to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Are you ready to finally discover how to purchase the 401 Lake House? What do you value more in life? A deceiving number on a piece of paper that you receive in the mail a couple times a year, or living free and thriving from the real experiences of life? If you answered the latter, well, then you need to twist that dial on your commute to work, turn up the volume in your headphones while you're mowing your grass, or crank up that Bluetooth speaker on your patio because we are about to bring it. Welcome to the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast, your guide to understanding how to get out of the Wall Street rat race and start your own mailbox money lifestyle. Now, don't let the handsome Southern draws fool you. These financial minds are teaching our country to enhance savings, increase cash flow, and create passive income, all without the help of Wall Street. Are you ready to break through? Here are your hosts, Russ Morgan, Joey Murray, and Will DeShazer. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. This is Will, your money millinovator, sitting right here with the ever-popular, at least his kids think so, Russ Morgan, and the Italian stallion of real estate financial coaching himself, Joey Murray. Guys, it is a beautiful late spring day. The air doesn't feel like a sauna. How happy are y'all right now?
Oh, so happy. I love this time of year.
I mean, I love it. I'm going to tell you, I love the fact that we're right now here in Alabama, mid 70s, low 80s, somewhere like that, because we've had rain for 3 straight days. And it's not 110% humidity at 95 degrees outside. But at the same time, we're approaching the time of year that I'd be remiss without saying that I don't have some lamenting in the fact that I'm not heading down to the lake this week.
That's right. Your in-laws got rid of that lake house, didn't they?
Well, they didn't get rid of just the lake house. They got rid of the 401 lake house.
Ah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you don't know what I'm talking about here, my in-laws in 2001 bought a lake house at Lake Martin, which is a beautiful place here in Alabama. It's really close to Auburn, which is, our university that my wife and I and my brother-in-law all went to school at. And it was about
sorry.
Yeah. Is it
the Alabama fan?
I was waiting on that.
I looked at Joey and I could tell he was expecting it. I wasn't going to say it, but for his sake, I did.
What I figured out is that they made the best investment you could ever make. We are constantly searching for what is the best investment. And I will tell you, I experienced the best investment when they bought that lake house. I'm just going to give you some details here, Joey. They bought the lake house in 2001 for $200,000. He put in $20,000 as a down payment. And from that point on, took the same amount of money that he was putting into his 401k and just made his mortgage payment, property and taxes, insurance payment, and so forth.
Which that was what? About $1,500 a month?
Yeah, it was a little less than that, but yeah, pretty close.
Okay.
And for the next 14 years, my kids grew up in that house. I mean, you've been down there before. You know,
yes.
Jumping off the top dock, us riding on pontoon boats.
Joey jumped off the dock.
Yeah, well,
did he do a backflip or did he skinny dive into it?
I don't remember.
No, there was no backflipping.
There's no gainers.
I have never been able to pull that off.
You're a can opener guy.
The preacher seat.
Oh, nice.
Anybody familiar with
Classic.
The preacher seat is the money jump. I get the biggest splash.
Well, you didn't preacher seat off of that because I can tell you 10 foot off that top dock onto that thing. Preacher seat, you still be remembering what that was. So you probably
leaves a mark.
You probably pencil dived that thing or something. But I want to get into some specifics of this today because this is a often asked question: is should I get a second home, and how valuable is that investment? And I know that I've gone on both sides of this because you and I had a conversation one time.
I'm about to tell you, I'm frustrated right now.
Yeah, we went back and forth on you buying a beach house when you're still a client of mine.
That's right. And you totally talked me out of it. So I'm ready to hear this 401 lake house idea because
clearly it wasn't a 401 condo for Joey.
That's right. It didn't work out so much for me. And I think that's important. Like what we're going to share today is not for everybody. And it's in certain cases, it may not make the most sense. But I think the critical thing is that we're staying with this theme of wealth without Wall Street,
Yep.
giving alternative ideas that don't just go with the flow. They don't go with, hey, everybody's doing this, so it must be the right thing. And that's what we're talking about, that sacred cow, the 401k. We're about to give it some real alternatives here for people that want that second home experience.
You're pulling Gary Gunderson here. You're killing that sacred cow, right?
That's right.
All right.
Slaughtered.
Which, by the way, if you have not read Killing Sacred Cows by Garrett Gunderson, I completely recommend that book. It's an awesome read, and it does address the myths of finance. And one of those is the 401k is our best friend. And not to say if you have one that you've done something bad, but there's also alternatives, right? Because we're talking about wealth without Wall Street. And I'm telling you, man, for 14 years, our family went down to this lake house and we had Sea-Doos, we had skiing, we had rope swings, we had horseshoes. We just had awesome slumber parties with my wife's family, their kids. I mean, we just have lots and lots of kids amongst our families. And man, we had times where we would stay there and go to the Auburn game, which was 20 minutes away, and that was our midpoint instead of having to drive all the way back to Birmingham, which is about an hour and a half. And
I remember us going there on a golf trip.
Oh yeah,
remember a bunch of guys? I mean, we had probably like 10 guys.
Oh, that's awesome! I forgot
staying in that place, and it was comfortable. It wasn't like everybody was stacked up in there.
Oh no, I thought you were playing golf there this week, but you're playing up in Oxford. I was going to say you are really going to be remiss because you'll be playing down there.
Yeah, no, I forget about that. I mean, we've had just so many memories in that place, and I have to give you some, Will, for the show notes. But I mean, just watching my kids from my youngest being born in 2005 through my oldest being born in 2012, or my youngest being born in 2012, and just like I was going back through some pictures. And it was just kind of crazy to see how they grew up in this house. But just to kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts of this, because this is why we're talking about, where are other places, where are alternatives to put our money? And, in 2017, if you're just a straight employee and you're putting money into a 401k, you can put up to $18,000 in, right?
That's right.
But if you are an employer or you are a business owner and you have a SEP IRA, there's ways that you can put up to $54,000 a year. And that's normally the number one reason why people contribute to those, because they're high income brackets and they're trying to reduce their income, right?
That's right.
And that's why we're taught to constantly from CPAs, that's what we should do. But, you and I had a conversation last week with one of the heads of the real estate group here in Alabama, the Alabama Investment Association, right? The AIA. And he was talking to us about how, whenever he has conversations with people with high income problems, tax problems, he talks to them about buying real estate and how writing off that Schedule E and all of the stuff that goes along with that. Well, Joey, I got to experience this firsthand, watching my in-laws take the same money that they were going to contribute to his 401k that his company provided, and instead they made a mortgage payment. They made a property and taxes payment down at the Lake Martin. And you know what? When you look at it, they both offer the same exact reduction in income. One is an income tax reduction through a 401k, but with the 401 Lake House, that mortgage payment is deductible. That interest is deductible. Those taxes are deductible.
That's right.
And really, the same reduction that he had in income happened for both of them. Now, I'm going to stop right there, because that's really where most people are looking for. They're looking for a tax deduction, a reduction in taxes. Where would you rather be? Looking at your 401k statement, or looking out at a crystal clear water and looking at your grandchildren and your children growing up?
There's going to be some people hearing this story and they'll be like, Russ, really? I mean, you want me to take retirement money I would have been putting in 401k and putting it into a lake house or a condo at the beach or a mountain home, whatever it might be? I mean, I'm glad to be able to go over some of these things and go through the nuts and bolts, but you can't put a dollar figure on what you just said. I envision, I think you maybe explained it this way. You put your arm around your kid and show them the lake or do you show them a statement with a bunch of numbers on it? I mean, really?
There's not a whole lot of comparison there, right? You're not building a whole lot of memory saying, look, son, look at the disclosures and fees and the charts on this account.
What'd you say, Russ? Taking your kids or grandkids down for a nice joyride to the mailbox? I love that.
Well, I mean, that's really when I started looking at this lake house that they had, and I knew what they were doing after the fact. I didn't know it from the very beginning because I wasn't in the financial industry in 2001. I didn't start till 2004, so I didn't really completely understand it. I just knew the benefits our family were having.
In-laws lake house, I'm down.
Like, I was like, this is awesome. Like, you guys want to go on a golf trip? I got a place that we can stay, right? I mean,
That's right.
I started thinking about all of those things. Just to give you the end part, because there's some of you're like, oh, okay, who cares about those sappy stories, right? What's the end result of this? We pulled up the market history from 2001 to 2015, which they sold in 2015. My father-in-law, they retired, and this was a retirement place. This was something they were doing, and they ended up buying another piece of property. So I'm excited they did that. But they sold the lake house in 2015, and I'm sitting here looking at the market history from 2001 to 2015. There's some red numbers on that chart, right?
Absolutely.
There's some times where the market was not very kind. But at the end of the day, its average rate of return from 2001 to 2015 was 4.7%. And it's funny. I sat down and I asked my father-in-law earlier, I said, remind me what you bought the lake house for. And he said, I bought it for $200,000. I said, and when you sold it in 2015, what did it sell for? $385,000. And when we just stuck that in a calculator, because I hadn't done the math until we just did a second ago, what did it say that return was?
14 years, right?
14 years.
Yeah, almost 4.8%.
I mean, how funny is it the stock market and the real estate market, I mean, they had different ebbs and flows during that time frame, but over that same 14-year period of time had exactly the same return. But let me ask you, Joey, was the return, the internal rate of return, the same?
Well, absolutely not. And I almost mentioned it a minute ago when you were talking about looking over that really beautiful statement with your kid. I would have said, don't look too close at the fees, right? That might make you sick. But the bigger thing, I think, that goes into that final rate of return or that complete comprehensive return is how it's going to be taxed, right? So this lake house, it was taxed at capital gains, right?
Yeah.
On that gain from those 14 years. But if he's pulling out the same amount of money out of his 401k, he's getting ordinary income tax on that.
Right. And what's if you don't mind me asking the age of your father-in-law?
He's 70 now.
Today?
Yeah.
So he's about to be forced.
He's going to have to sell his 401k or sell his lake house no matter what, right? Because there's a mandatory pull out of any sort of qualified assets, IRAs, 401ks at 70 and a half. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're absolutely right. He's going to be forced to take that money out. And here's one of the things that you mentioned fees. I want to go back to that because there's fees at a lake house, right? I mean,
oh, sure.
Utility bills, they exist, right? I mean, there's air conditioner bills. That stuff exists. So, obviously that's going to drag down the return. If you added all of those things back in there, he was going to have to reduce his return off of that. But, we just showed the stock market from 2001 to 2015 earned 4.7%. But if you threw a 1.5% fee on that number goes into the twos, right? Because it's not just like you take 4.7, you reduce it by 1.5. That's not the way it works. It never had the chance to earn that. So you had less money growing. So I think he did pretty good. Even if they were the same, right? And they weren't. But even if they were the same, they became better, just exactly what you said. He paid 15% in capital gains tax rate versus his ordinary income tax rate today would be around 30%. So he paid half in taxes on the gain as he would have in there. And I think there's just some things that I didn't realize how smart my father-in-law is. So, Toby, you're listening to this. I just want you to know, I question you in certain time frames. I know we've argued, how old is Rafael Nadal? I thought he was 35. You told me he was 20-something. He was actually 31.
So neither of you were right.
We were not, but I went over, right? Price is Right concept,
you did,
right?
If you went over,
I was totally Price is Right on that deal. I lost. But on this, I give you your due. This is such an awesome idea for so many reasons. But when you're just looking at the fine-tuned numbers like that, it's like, wow, That's much better.
Yeah, because people can quantify or qualify. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, would you rather be looking at this number on a piece of paper or experiencing the real freedom of life while reassessing it and seeing the number on a piece of paper?
Yeah, you get both.
That makes total sense.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think here's a great point I want to make about the tax piece. We just got done talking about ordinary income tax versus the capital gains. What income tax did he think he was going to be in 2001? Did he know?
Upon withdrawing?
Yeah, in 2015.
No.
I mean, at this stage. Now, we're only talking about 14 years, but most people are putting money in 401k for how many years?
30, 40.
30, 40.
And at what tax rate?
And they're doing it. I mean, we've even talked about this, maybe even on the show before, but I know numerous meetings. It's kind of like you're sitting at the closing table and you're saying, I don't care what interest rate you're going to charge me in 30 years on this mortgage. Just put TBD on that line.
TBD, is that like a disease? What is that?
To be determined.
Oh,
Like, who in the right mind would sit at a closing table and sign a note for a mortgage and there's no interest rate written in? Nobody would do that, right?
Yeah.
It's ludicrous. But that's what we're doing with a 401k all day long. SEP IRAs, any of these qualified plans. We're constantly saying TBD. And in this case, we can see it in 14 years. But for those that are putting money in 401ks and those other things, they have no clue what it's going to be taxed at.
well, several ways you can look at taxes. And as we're looking at this, and he ended up selling the lake house, which, of course, again, I look outside, I look how beautiful it is, and I go, this weekend I could be riding on that Sea-Doo, I could be like showing my kid like how to rope swing.
Instead of settling for the Lifetime Fitness pool.
That's right. Well, we bought a smaller lake house, I like to refer to the pond that we have out behind our house.
Yeah.
As a lake, I don't think 2 acres represents a lake, but I've always been known to exaggerate size of certain things, but I look at this and I go, there's more things that you can talk about when it comes to taxes than there is just selling it, because there's also legacy, right? Because see, the thing is they took some of that money and they bought land with us at this house, this lake house. And that's a house they're going to be leaving to our family because we bought kind of like a family compound where we are. And do you know, Joey, being in the real estate world, obviously you know this, but when you sell a house or when you pass away and your kids inherit a house, inherit a house, what tax rate do you think they pay?
Well, they actually get a step up in their basis at that point.
What that means
explain what that means.
Yeah, explain that to our millinovator here.
Okay, so in this case, let's say that you inherit their house and it's worth $800,000 at that time. They could have only paid $400 for it whenever they first built it or whatever it might be. You're now inheriting a new basis at $800 and only having to pay tax in the future on the gains from that.
What I'm hearing you say is that if he would have bought the house they just built for $400 and they pass away and it's worth $800, and for instance, we did want to sell it to somebody outside of our family, we'd pay no taxes because our family would inherit it at $800,000.
That's right.
But let me compare that.
Yeah, compared to what? Right.
Well, compare that to our CPA is constantly telling me how he's trying to convince his clients to quit putting money in qualified plans, and which is completely opposite of what.
Whoa. Did you just say what I think you should say?
CPA is
our CPA, right? Because he understands. He's listening to what we've talked about so many times about how building up money for a future tax bubble is not a good idea. And he's like on board and he shares this constantly. And when I ask him, like, again, what are you telling these guys? He goes, Russ, when I see these families and they've got, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in these qualified plans, and the several clients I've had that have passed away and those kids inherit that money, it's like a huge whammy to those kids because they now have to go pay ordinary income tax on this huge windfall. The government gets 50 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
And it gets worse if they have a state tax problems, right? Well, if you're dealing with real estate, there is no tax on that money. It's just a step up. You get the actual property value. I think there's huge parts to that. Not to mention, there's no limits. There's limits. I talked about it from the very beginning. You can only put in $18,000 or $54,000 a year. And for a lot of our clients,
And you're talking about in qualified plans.
they need to be saving more than that in order to reach their goals. Well, I mean, how big of a home do I have to have? I can deduct up to $1 million in loan interest, right? I mean, you're in the mortgage world for 11 years. How big a home is that?
Well, just thinking in terms of like limits on what they could have been putting into a SEP or something like that. That's almost, let's just say it's a little bit more than $4,000 a month
In a mortgage.
into a mortgage. I mean, do the math on it, whatever the interest rate of the day is, but that's probably somewhere in the realm of a $650,000 loan when you consider taxes, insurance, and all that. That's probably a $750,000 lake house or beach house or whatever it might be.
So that's under the $1 million that they actually could deduct. So they truly could put in more money if they wanted to.
Correct.
And get the same reduction in income. Now, I'm not, again, going back to the point where several years back, you wanted to buy a beach house and we went through the math and we couldn't make it make sense for you. But it also was because you were not going to go there all the time. And
right.
And we started going through that thing. I think it's from what my in-laws did, it was much different. They had my wife and her brother at Auburn at the time, and it became the place to go. Instead of going to the beach, instead of going on the other vacations, that's where we went.
Right.
And instead of investing the money in the stock market, which what he would have done with the money, and we look back and we go, wow, what a great return. But the return is really just what you said at the very beginning, Will, is that if he had a 401k, we would have, in 2015 looked down and he would have roughly had about $350,000 to $400,000 in that based upon that same time frame. And that's all he would have had.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have been able to use it.
Well, but he would have had the scrapbook full of the statements.
Well, and my father-in-law keeps stuff. There's no doubt he'd have a dresser drawer full of statements that he would have kept, but it'd be nothing like their wall right now. You walk into their house and they've got 3 or 4 big, huge collage like frames, one of those like 20 picture kind of frame things. And every single one of them are full of the pictures from 2001 to 2015 of us down at that lake house. That my daughter, skiing for the first time, having one of my daughter's 3rd birthday parties there, us having Thanksgiving there one year, us bringing friends like you guys down and going through all that stuff, jumping off the top dock, riding the pontoon boats, 4th of July. I can go on and on and on. There's so many pictures that they have. It's no comparison to a statement, bro.
Yeah.
It's not even close.
Yeah. And I think Will and I were even talking about this. There's even a big, I think, an awakening to a certain degree of people that realize that minimalism is really the answer to a certain degree. Like, how do we create more experiences in life versus just this, let me put money away and hope that one day it's big enough to start enjoying it, right? Retirement has become this idea that like, oh, well, now I can start enjoying it after I put it off for 40
Wait
years.
till 59 and a half to enjoy my life.
Yeah.
Dude, I hope that I'm in great shape when I'm 60. Don't get me wrong. But you're not going to find me pedaling across Europe when I'm 60 years old or jumping off the top deck of a dock when I'm 60. That's not going to happen.
So I think that there's a very valid point to what we're talking about today. And we've kind of alluded to this, but I just want to reiterate. Maybe there's this picture of the 401k is just like having a lock on those assets. You can't get to them. There's penalties if you do. It's like putting your hand in the cookie jar. You're going to get it slapped and you're going to say, never again. I'm not going to do that. But you go to that 401 lake house with a key, right? Just that picture of opening the door, I think that resonates with me. And it resonates with so many people.
Well, I mean, I had the conversation yesterday. Somebody was saying, we were talking about some of the things we do, and they said, this is so awesome. I want to participate more. I've got about $70,000 that we've stuffed away into a 401k over the last 5 years. Can I get that money out and use it to go do some of these things we're talking about doing? I was like, you can call your HR provider. You can ask them if you have some in-service withdrawal privileges, but most likely the answer is no. They're going to say, no, you can't get it. Your brother can't get it. Your sister can't get it. Nobody can get it. But I had lots of friends go down to that lake house from time to time. And you know what I would tell them? Hey, by the way, underneath the deck, there's a little door. Open that up and look up above the door, and there's a key hanging on a hook there. And then take that key off the hook, and they'd open the door, and they were off to the races. Man, how much cooler is that when you get to actually enjoy the money and their situation had the same return virtually. I would say actually probably a higher internal rate of return because of the cash flows of it. But at the end of the day, the lifetime memories that they had and the opportunities it created, because just what we were talking about, one of those opportunities was that we had a Sunday school outing there. And I got to bring you and several other people I know. Well, you and I are bonding relationships back then that now have made us business partners.
Yeah, that's huge.
I mean, that's the kind of thing where it wasn't like I ever would like take you and take my 401k statement and say, hey, by the way, take a look at this, man. And
yeah, let's hang out.
I'm doing really well. Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't do that because you would. I mean, no matter what it says, either you don't want to show how little it is, how bad it's doing, or if it's doing great and has lots of money, you don't want to be prideful in it, right?
Yeah.
But there's nothing prideful taking somebody down to the lake house and saying, let's enjoy our families together and let's take advantage of this. But this is my investment, right? So it's not only that it is a lake house, it was an investment. It was a place that they were investing their dollars instead of in a 401k, SEP IRA, whatever it is.
Let me just say this. So someone may be hearing our story and saying, oh, I need to liquidate what I have in my 401k. That's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the contributions to that could be redirected to something else. That's what we're all about on this show is alternatives to Wall Street. You don't have to change what you've already done dramatically, but you do need to be thinking about how can I improve on what I've already done and or how can I, going forward, make changes that will give me more of what I want my money to do? Maybe it's more memories and experiences like what we've talked about today and the returns that we're talking about. Or maybe it's I want to create passive income some way today so that I can have those experiences. Well, so I just want to kind of reiterate that.
And what was that, Russ? We're good friends with an economist, Dr. Paul Cleveland, who teaches, and he talks about wealth. What does he say? That money in the exchange?
He says money is not wealth.
Right.
It's just a means to purchase. It's the products, goods, and services that we have.
Exactly.
Is wealth.
And just like he said, like you just reiterated, money is not wealth.
No.
And if you think that money is wealth, then go redirect and get a lake house and you'll realize with a family. That's true wealth, right? The times that you've had down there, the pictures that are on the wall, that's true wealth. And it's a lot more than the good old joyride down to the mailbox. or maybe pulling out the scrapbook 10, 20 years from now, showing the good statements from the good days like 2007, 2008. Actually, I'm looking at the graph here. Those were terrible days, but I guess 13 would have been a good one had you stopped after that year. Right. But guys, if you know anyone who thinks, man, I need an alternative. I'm tired of this traditional 401k. I want a 401k lake house, right? I want a 401 condo. Whatever that might be, refer them over to the show. Let them listen to this. This is just an alternative way to build wealth without Wall Street. And that's what we are all about. So don't only do that. Don't stop there. Also review us. Give us a review on iTunes. Let us know how we're doing. Give us the feedback that what you want to hear or what you want the next show to be about or what you love, hate, or really enjoy about our handsome Southern draws. Whatever it may be, tell us because we do this show for you. We're here to educate you and teach you a way to create and build wealth without Wall Street. So until next time, Joey, Russ, it was fun.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks for sharing, Russ.
We'll see you guys in the next episode. This has been the Wealth Without Wall Street podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show to break free of the Wall Street mindset and begin building wealth on your terms in places you understand so that your wealth will never run dry. See you next episode.